Hey everyone, Josh with Ultra Life today. If you like what we're doing, like, subscribe, and share. Hello everyone. In our last episode, we talked about allergies, where they come from, how to fight them, practical things that you can do. You'll want to watch that if you haven't. And this time we're going to talk about something that a friend describes to me as maybe allergies on steroids. It's kind of a new buzzword out there, MCAS. It's a 4-letter acronym that stands for Mast Cell Activation Syndrome. And we have our friend Mary Jane Fry. She's a doctor of pharmacy. We've got Adam Payne, CEO of Ultra Botanica, hanging out on the end. And I think, Adam, you and I are going to get schooled today.
I hope hopeful. So. I'm actually excited because I got to admit, I know literally nothing about mast cell activation syndrome. I know a little bit about mast cells.
You know a lot more than you think you know.
I think you do. I think
you guys have been telling me.
I think you do too.
Yeah, you're going to get going and you're going to be fine.
So what's your nutshell, like if you're talking to a layman, and that would be me, what would you say, what is mast cell activation syndrome?
What does it look like?
So first off, I am not an expert on mast cell activation syndrome.
But you've been learning a lot, though,
but I've been working
year.
on it. And I've had several different webinars and Zoom meetings and things on it. So I'm learning. But basically, like you said, histamine intolerance, histamine issues on steroids. So the mast cell is a part of our innate immune system. And Adam's already talked about it. It's hanging out. And what was described to me is that it hangs out in portals of entry. So it hangs out. We have more mast cells in our mouth, in our sinuses, in our lungs, on our skin. So that's where mast cells typically hang out.
So it's like a surveillance cell.
Exactly. So they're early defense, and they're in recruitment and protection of the system.
Interesting.
So that's where mast cells hang out. Now, it's part of our innate immune system. And a mast cell, besides for histamine, we talked about histamine being in the cell, there's hundreds of other chemicals in the cells.
Oh, interesting.
And so those different chemicals are then released at the same time. And where histamine, a lot of times histamine's affecting the sinuses, or it's affecting the gut if it's a food intolerance. Individual spots that it could be affecting.
Yeah,
but when it gets to the mast cells, it's on overdrive, and so it's affecting multiple body parts or organs at the same time.
So what is a symptom list for MCAS? I mean, is it
my gosh,
unbelievably could be? When
Adam was describing his shrimp reaction,
yes,
I actually thought you were going to say that you found out that you had MCAS that long ago. So
interesting.
It can be headaches. It can be major fatigue. It can be gut issues. It can be histamine type issues. So the list, they can be neurological, sleep disturbances. So they're extreme. The list is way too long to just pull.
Whenever these new buzzwords come out like this, I'm always thinking to myself, how in the world do they come around to being able to diagnose this? And I bet it's gone undiagnosed for long periods of time in people until they actually began to really figure this out. Is there a way to diagnose this that's relatively simple, or no?
There's not a lot of ways to diagnose this from the speakers that I've been listening to.
Goodness.
So one way they said was trypsin is one of the things released out of the mast cell. And so you can do a trypsin test. Okay. And so that gives a level of checking. They said that you can do histamine levels in the blood, but histamine levels in the blood, they said, were very short acting. And so you have a lot of false negatives.
Oh, gotcha.
Then they said this woman said the other test that she does is a urinary methylated histamine, I think I'm saying that right, metabolite, and it shows up elevated in the urine, and they test for 24 hours. And she said both the trypsin test and the urinary test can be done locally by most of the lab companies locally. Some insurance will pay for them, some won't pay for them. She recommended paying cash for the urinary test because a cash price was in the low hundreds, and an insurance denial, you get stuck with the price, was like $1,000.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Have you been incorporating some of these tests now that you've been learning about this at all?
Not yet.
Not yet?
And
Okay.
I would probably, if somebody were as complicated as MCAS, I would probably be referring them to someone else that can handle all the different layers at the same time.
Okay.
So I'm going to have to see how I respond to that once I have some patients that come up with having the MCAS diagnosis or enough symptoms. I was told there should be a survey or a questionnaire that you can give somebody, like Lyme and tick-borne illness questionnaire I use. There's hormone questionnaires. There's histamine questionnaires if somebody's having histamine intolerances. But this goes beyond that. The people that were speaking on one of the meetings that I was listening to said they literally can't get out of bed. And so that's dramatic
Yeah.
changes in patients. And so I'm not usually the first go-to at that point.
Right.
But if I have a patient who I'm not finding is getting better at what I'm trying, then that could be a place that I might go to.
Is it just typical soup to nuts in terms of managing symptoms? In other words, is it going to be the whole dietary thing, supplementation, all environmental exposure, all those things are going to play into it probably?
What they said was there's lots of different triggers, and you have to find your trigger.
Oh.
So your trigger might be a virus. Your trigger might be stress. Your trigger might be a female cycle or going into menopause. Your trigger might be a food. So there's so many different triggers that you have to find that trigger. And then you eliminate the trigger. She said mold and MCAS go hand in hand a lot of times.
Wow.
That patients will just be wiped out and they find out they have mold, and then they get diagnosed with MCAS because of the extreme reactions they're having to the mold.
So other than the tests that you mentioned, we haven't covered genetics yet as it relates to MCAS. Is that something that also would play into the tests that you do? Is that something you're hearing other people are using the genetic roadmap as well?
The one speaker I listened to was through the 3x4 platform
nice.
that I was able to listen. And she talked all about MCAS first, and then she incorporated where in the pathways you would see potential reasons for that high response and impact, being inflammation, being detoxification, being the histamine pathways, those types of pathways that were causing the exacerbation of the response.
Stress related? Is
Absolutely.
Stress can be a big trigger?
Stress can be one of the triggers. Yeah, I wrote down viruses, some bacterias, venoms. Those can be, so even like mosquito bites.
Wow.
So what does it look like? I mean, can you identify somebody that has mast cell activation syndrome based upon a clinical picture? Are these chronically sick people? Are they what's really going on underneath clinically with them?
So they're chronically sick, but they go to the doctor and the doctor doesn't know what's wrong with them. And so they have anxiety as one of the other
Oh, yes.
reactions.
Yes.
And so that anxiety is showing up, and they say, you're just depressed. We'll give you something for it.
Right.
Those types of sending them home. I see that now with some Epstein-Barr patients too, that they're being told, they don't test the same tests that we test for Lyme or Epstein-Barr. A lot of times they're just looking at them and looking at their basics. So sometimes I'll see in the CBC the eosinophil
Right,
reactions,
elevations,
monocytes. Those are two places that I'm looking a lot of times. The one speaker did say that checking the immune globulins and the cytokines can sometimes give extra awareness to the issue, but that's not happening very often yet.
That's amazing.
Is there anything that these experts have been discussing as it relates to an individual that does have MCAS? They know they do. It's elevating their stress levels, like you just mentioned. Are there any tricks, brain tricks, breathing exercises, anything that they discuss to try to have an individual make it that is suffering with this?
You know what? One of the talks I was listening to in my car, but they did say that there was a neuro therapy.
What?
That was at home type therapy that people were learning that was helping them repair their system.
Wow.
What?
That's
neuroimmune.
Okay,
You've
I find
heard
it
that
hard. Yeah, I've heard of
combination.
that, but a lot of that stuff seems a little.
Well, you do have to remember Mary Jane's the one that actually taught us how to do the cold water vagus nerve stimulation.
But that is scientifically proven.
I think this is too.
What really?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't have it written down, so I can't tell you what it's
we'll
called.
be looking that one up.
I'll send it to you.
So, but you're saying that there's a way to essentially intervene on the syndrome using some nerve stimulation?
Right. Now, it depends on what your trigger is also.
Right.
If your trigger is stress, then that's where that one is going to be beneficial. If your trigger is mold, they said one patient had to move out of the house that had the mold in it.
Yeah.
So
you have
then
to be removed from it.
you have to be removed from it, and then you have to clear it from your system. So those are places. They use H2 antihistamines, which are the actual famotidine, which is Pepsid, or they used to use Zantac. Some use Tagamet still. Right. So they're using those first generation ulcer medications and reflux medications to affect the histamine pathways. Because we have histamine 1 pathways, we have histamine 2, 3, and 4 pathways. Histamine 1 is your antihistamines, your Benadryls, your Claritins, your Zyrtecs.
Yeah.
Those. And then histamine 2s are the gut-related ones. But skin reactions, I've seen docs, dermatologists, use the skin reaction response is the H2. So it's fascinating when you can look at all the different levels of the histamine reactions, diversity in different parts of the body.
Have you observed among these different people that are doing the webinars and what you're learning there that they really are on a fast learning curve right now for being able to really drill in, dial in, diagnose, and then give somebody a plan of action?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's good, because I know some people that deal with this, and what you have described is, I'm telling you, Adam, it can be massive headaches at times. It can be complete and utter fatigue, like you say, when you couldn't get out of bed and you were, curled up in a ball. It can be all kinds of skin reactions, and it just goes on. And the mental stress of it is just unbelievable.
This actually is a clinical picture of my wife's experience. She deals with like sudden fatigue that'll just hit her like a ton of bricks, and there's no rhyme or reason. It's not. She hasn't eaten anything. She hasn't done anything. But it's just like the end of the day stress is kind of like hit her. And then she gets these weird mouth sores that are kind of not from different foods.
Right.
So, I have a direction to point her in.
It's fascinating. I'll send you some of these links to the people.
That would be great. That would be great. She's been seeing Deanna Wyndham as an integrated physician. So I don't know if Deanna's even thought about mast cell activation syndrome for Kathy.
I know Deanna talked about treating mast cells because there's a lot of mast cell activation with post-COVIDs.
Yeah.
So one speaker I listened to, she said that she felt like reactivation of Epstein-Barr was a huge place that was laying in the long COVID arena, but the mast cell activation syndrome is actually huge in that also.
I think that's exciting. I really do.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, we've been talking to. There's this whole kind of Lyme disease is a chronic disease that similar in kind of characteristic to mast cell activation syndrome. People can be suffering with it, not know it, right? And some of these chronic conditions are impenetrable because if there's a bacterial component, the bacterial sometimes creates biofilm.
Absolutely.
Right? And so that it become, it's no treatment can get into the space. I heard, this is really, this might blow your mind. It's completely off subject, but it's sort of similar. That going down to diving down to 100 feet.
This is not out of the realm because I know one of the people who've done that.
Really?
Yes. Locally, he went and dove. His Lyme symptoms were completely eradicated for a length of time.
Yeah, so at 100
it's
feet.
Fascinating. You have to go down 100.
Right, but which could also be accomplished in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber.
Right.
Okay.
And the reason why 100 feet works is that it's solubilizing gases in the tissues of the body, and at that depth, when you come back up, it disrupts the biofilm.
How cool is that?
It is really cool.
It's very cool.
We'll talk about that some more.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Well, we have just kind of scratched the surface on mast cell. I love the fact that you're learning and that you're local here, Mary Jane, and
it's very helpful.
Continue to help us, giving us information and links. If you would like to reach out to Mary Jane Fry, you can find her by emailing medicpharmacy@sbcglobal.net. medicpharmacy@sbcglobal.net. Also, she can be reached at 405-755-3921. This is Ultra Life Today.